The autumn wind of 1885 whipped through the streets of Millbrook as Emily Mitchell stood at the altar of the town's only church, her heart pounding with nervous excitement. She had traveled all the way from Boston to marry Caleb Hartwell, a man she knew only through letters. At 26, Emily had given up hope of finding love in the crowded city where her past seemed to follow her everywhere. This small Nebraska town was supposed to be her fresh start, her chance at the family she had always dreamed of having. But as Emily stood there in her carefully mended white dress, watching Caleb's face grow pale as he whispered with his friend near the altar, she felt the first flutter of dread in her stomach. The church was packed with curious townspeople, all eager to see their bachelor rancher finally settle down with his mail-order bride. What they witnessed instead would become the talk of Millbrook for months to come. "I can't do this," Caleb announced suddenly, his voice carrying across the silent church. "I just learned something about this woman that changes everything." Emily's face burned with shame as every eye in the building turned to stare at her. "I was told she's barren. Damaged goods. What use is a wife who can't give a man children?" The cruel words hit Emily like physical blows. Someone in town had discovered her secret and shared it with Caleb just moments before their vows. The infertility that had ended her engagement back in Boston had followed her across the country like a curse. She stood frozen as gasps and whispers filled the church, feeling smaller with each passing second. "I won't be tied to a woman who can't fulfill her basic duty as a wife," Caleb continued, his voice growing stronger as he warmed to his audience. "This marriage is off." Without another word, he pushed past Emily and strode down the aisle, leaving her standing alone at the altar in front of the entire town. Emily's legs nearly gave out beneath her. The faces in the pews blurred as tears filled her eyes. Some looked at her with pity, others with judgment, but all with the knowledge that she was somehow less than other women. The Reverend cleared his throat awkwardly and mumbled something about the service being concluded. Emily gathered what little dignity she had left and ran from the church, her wedding dress catching on the rough wooden door as she fled. Outside, the October air was sharp and cold, but Emily barely felt it through her humiliation. She stumbled down Main Street, ignoring the stares of people who had witnessed her shame. Her small carpet bag sat on the church steps where she had left it that morning, full of hope. Now it contained everything she owned in the world, and she was more alone than ever. The train station sat at the edge of town like a promise of escape. Emily clutched her bag tighter and quickened her pace. She had just enough money for a ticket back east, though she had no idea what waited for her there. At least in a big city, she could disappear again. At least there, people wouldn't know her as the woman who wasn't good enough to marry. Lost in her desperate thoughts, Emily almost didn't hear the small voices calling to her. It wasn't until a tiny hand tugged at her torn dress that she looked down and saw them. Two little girls, identical twins with tangled brown hair and smudged faces, stood barefoot in the dirt road. They couldn't have been more than 5 years old, and their clothes were far too big, hanging loose on their small frames. The girls looked up at Emily with huge brown eyes that seemed far too old for their young faces. There was something in their expression that made Emily's heart skip, a desperate hope mixed with the kind of weariness that came from disappointment. "Miss," the braver of the two said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you sad?" Emily knelt down, suddenly forgetting her own troubles. Up close, she could see that the children were thin, their skin pale beneath the dirt. When had they last had a proper meal? "I'm fine, sweethearts," she managed to say, though her voice was still thick with unshed tears. "Where are your parents?" The two girls exchanged a look that spoke of secrets and fears. The quieter twin stepped forward, clutching a worn rag doll to her chest. "We don't have a mama," she said simply. "She went to heaven when we were babies. And Papa's been gone for 3 days," the first girl added. "We've been waiting, but he hasn't come back yet." Emily's heart clenched. These children were alone, just as alone as she was, but they were so young, so vulnerable. "What are your names?" she asked gently. "I'm Anna," said the outgoing twin. "This is my sister Cora." Cora gave a tiny wave, but remained pressed close to Anna's side. Emily stood slowly, looking around at the empty street. Where was everyone? How could an entire town ignore two hungry children? "Where do you live? Is there someone taking care of you?" Anna shook her head. "People said they'd help, but nobody came. We've been sharing the bread from Murphy's store, but it's almost gone." Something shifted inside Emily's chest, a feeling she had never experienced before but recognized instantly. These children needed someone. They needed a mother. And in that moment, looking into their hopeful faces, Emily forgot all about her train ticket and her plans to flee. Anna took a step closer, her small hand reaching out to touch Emily's dress. "Miss," she said, her voice filled with a courage that made Emily's breath catch, "can you be our mommy?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge over a vast canyon. Emily stared at these two little girls who had appeared just when she thought her life was over, asking her to be the one thing she had always wanted to be but thought she never could. What Emily didn't know was that saying yes to that simple question would change not just her life, but reveal secrets about their missing father that would shake the very foundations of Millbrook itself. The question echoed in Emily's mind as she looked down at Anna and Cora's hopeful faces. "Can you be our mommy?" These two little girls, strangers just moments ago, were asking her to be the one thing she had always dreamed of being. Emily's throat tightened with emotion as she knelt back down to their level. "Sweethearts," she said gently, "being a mommy is a very big job. Where do you live? Let's get you somewhere safe first." Anna took Emily's hand without hesitation, her small fingers surprisingly strong. Cora followed quietly behind, still clutching her worn doll. The girls led Emily down a dusty path that wound away from the main street toward the outskirts of town. Their home turned out to be a small wooden cabin that had clearly seen better days. The porch sagged slightly, and one of the shutters hung crooked. But Anna pushed open the unlocked door with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Inside, Emily gasped softly. The cabin was neat but sparse, with just the basics for survival. What struck her most was how organized everything was at child height. A wooden crate served as a makeshift table where the girls had been eating. Two small cups sat beside a nearly empty loaf of bread and a jar with just a few drops of milk left. "We've been taking care of ourselves," Anna said proudly, noticing Emily's expression. "Mama taught us before she went to heaven. She said we were her smart girls." Cora nodded solemnly. "Papa tries, but he gets sad sometimes. When he gets really sad, he goes away for a while to think." Emily's heart ached as she began to understand the situation. These children had been essentially raising themselves, with a father who disappeared when grief overwhelmed him. She looked around the small cabin and made a decision that surprised her with its certainty. "Well," Emily said, rolling up her sleeves, "I think you girls could use some help. Would it be okay if I stayed tonight to make sure you're safe?" The twins' faces lit up like Christmas morning. Anna clapped her hands together while Cora actually smiled for the first time since Emily had met them. "Really?" Anna asked. "You'll stay with us?" "Just for tonight," Emily said, though something in her chest was already protesting the temporary nature of that promise. "But first, let's get you two properly fed and cleaned up." Emily spent the afternoon transforming the little cabin into something that felt more like a real home. She found ingredients for a simple stew in the pantry and cooked the first hot meal the girls had eaten in days. She heated water on the stove and gave them both proper baths, washing their hair until it shined and finding clean nightgowns in a small chest that must have been their mother's. As the sun began to set, Emily tucked the twins into the cabin's single bedroom, sitting on the edge of their small bed. "Tell me about your papa," she said softly. "What's his name?" "Daniel Morrison," Anna said, snuggling deeper under the quilt. "He's really tall, and he has kind eyes, but they get sad when he thinks about Mama. He builds things," Cora added quietly, "beautiful things out of wood. He made our bed in Mama's rocking chair and the cross on her grave. Where did he go this time? Emily asked, brushing a strand of hair from Anna's forehead. Town doctor said he got hurt real bad when his horse spooked, Anna explained. They took him to the big hospital in the county seat. That was 3 days ago. 3 days, Emily repeated, feeling a surge of anger at a community that would leave 2 small children alone for so long. Has anyone checked on you? The twins exchanged that look again, the one that spoke of disappointment and broken promises. Mrs. Henderson said she'd bring supper, but she never came, Cora whispered. Mr. Murphy at the store gave us the bread, but he said he couldn't do more. Emily felt something fierce and protective awakening in her chest. These children had been abandoned by their father's accident and forgotten by their community. They were surviving on the kindness of a shopkeeper and their own remarkable resilience. Well, Emily said, her voice growing stronger with each word, you're not alone anymore. Not tonight. She stayed up late after the girls fell asleep, cleaning the cabin and taking stock of what they needed. She found herself humming as she worked, something she hadn't done since before her first engagement ended back in Boston. For the first time in years, Emily felt useful. More than useful, she felt needed. The next morning brought a knock at the door that made all 3 of them freeze. Anna and Cora had been helping Emily make breakfast, their faces bright with the simple joy of having someone care for them. Now they pressed close to Emily's sides as she opened the door. A tall man stood on the porch, his dark hair disheveled and his left arm in a sling. He looked exhausted and worried, but his eyes, just as Anna had said, were kind despite the pain Emily could see in them. This had to be Daniel Morrison. Who are you? He asked, his voice rough with confusion and something that might have been fear. What are you doing in my house with my daughters? Anna and Cora rushed past Emily. Papa, they cried in unison, throwing their arms around Daniel's waist. He winced as they bumped his injured arm, but his face transformed with relief and love as he held them close. I was so worried, he murmured into their clean hair. When I got back last night and found the cabin empty, I thought, he looked up at Emily over their heads. I spent all night searching for them. Mrs. Peterson finally told me this morning that she'd seen them with a woman in a wedding dress. Emily looked down at herself and realized she was still wearing her torn and stained wedding gown from yesterday. She must look like she'd lost her mind. I'm Emily Mitchell, she said quickly. I found Anna and Cora yesterday. They were alone and hungry, so She's been taking care of us, Papa. Anna interrupted excitedly. She made us stew and gave us baths and read us stories. And she didn't leave when we asked her to be our mommy. Daniel's eyes widened as he took in Emily's appearance and his daughter's obvious health and happiness. You stayed the night? With children you don't even know? They needed someone, Emily said simply, then felt heat rise in her cheeks as she realized how that must sound. I mean, I was just passing through, and they were alone, and I couldn't just... Thank you, Daniel said quietly, his voice thick with emotion that made Emily's heart skip. Thank you for keeping them safe. As Emily looked at this small family reuniting on the cabin porch, she realized her train ticket was still unused in her bag. She had intended to leave Millbrook forever, but these 2 little girls had changed everything with one innocent question. What she didn't know was that the man now holding them was about to change her life even more. The morning sun streamed through the cabin windows as Daniel Morrison sat at his small kitchen table, watching Emily help his daughters with their breakfast. His injured arm throbbed, but the pain seemed less important than the miracle he was witnessing. For the first time in months, Anna and Cora were giggling over their eggs, their faces bright and carefree. Miss Emily, will you teach us to braid our hair like yours? Anna asked, touching her own freshly washed locks that Emily had carefully combed that morning. Of course, sweetheart, Emily replied, and Daniel noticed how naturally the endearment came to her. She had been a stranger yesterday, yet she moved through his home like she belonged there, anticipating his daughter's needs before they even spoke them. After breakfast, Daniel cleared his throat awkwardly. Miss Mitchell, I need to thank you properly for what you've done, but I'm sure you have somewhere you need to be. Family waiting for you, perhaps. Emily's face clouded briefly, and she glanced toward her carpet bag sitting by the door. Actually, I don't. I was supposed to. She paused, clearly uncomfortable. Yesterday was supposed to be my wedding day. Was supposed to be? Daniel asked gently, though he could guess from her torn dress and presence here that something had gone terribly wrong. The groom changed his mind at the altar, Emily said quietly, busying herself with clearing the breakfast dishes. In front of the whole town, so I have nowhere I need to be, really. Daniel felt a surge of anger toward the man who had hurt her, followed immediately by something that felt dangerously like relief. His loss, he said simply, meaning it more than she could know. That afternoon, as Daniel struggled to manage his ranch work with one good arm, Emily surprised him by appearing at the barn door. "I thought you might need help," she said, rolling up her sleeves. "I grew up on a farm back east." Together, they fed the horses and chickens, Emily proving herself surprisingly capable with the animals. Daniel found himself stealing glances at her as she worked, noting how gently she spoke to the horses and how efficiently she moved through the chores. When their hands accidentally brushed while reaching for the same bucket, he felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the barn's dry hay. "Miss Mitchell," Daniel said that evening as they sat on the porch watching Anna and Cora play in the yard, "I have a proposition for you." Emily looked at him with those clear blue eyes that had been haunting his thoughts all day. "Oh, I need help," Daniel admitted, the words difficult for a man who prided himself on independence. "This injury is going to keep me from working properly for weeks. And the girls." He watched his daughters chasing fireflies in the growing dusk. "They've never been happier than they are right now. With you." "What are you saying?" Emily asked softly. "Stay, please. I can pay you fair wages as a housekeeper and nanny. The girls clearly love you, and honestly, I don't know how I'll manage without help." Daniel paused, then added quietly, "They've been asking for a mother since they could talk. I've never seen them take to anyone the way they have to you." Emily was quiet for a long moment, watching Anna show Cora how to cup fireflies gently in her palms. "You don't know anything about me," she said finally. "Yesterday's situation, it wasn't the first time I've been rejected. There are things about me that make me unsuitable as a wife." "I'm not asking you to be my wife," Daniel said, though something in his chest protested that statement. "I'm asking you to help me raise my daughters. And from what I've seen, there's nothing unsuitable about you when it comes to loving children." That night, Emily moved her few belongings into the small room off the kitchen that had once been Daniel's wife's sewing room. As she unpacked her simple dresses and brush, she heard Anna and Cora giggling in their bedroom, their voices carrying through the thin walls. "Do you think she'll really stay?" Cora whispered. "I hope so," Anna replied. "I like having a mama again, even if she's not really our mama." "She feels like our mama," Cora said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "Mama in heaven won't mind sharing. Will she?" Emily pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. These children had lost so much, yet their hearts were still open enough to love a broken stranger like her. Over the following weeks, Emily settled into a routine that felt more natural than anything she had ever experienced. She woke before dawn to start breakfast, helped Daniel with the ranch work his injury prevented him from doing alone, and spent her evenings reading to the girls or teaching them simple lessons in reading and arithmetic. The attraction between Emily and Daniel grew slowly, like a flower opening petal by petal in the sun. There were moments when their hands would touch while working side by side, or when she would catch him watching her with an expression that made her heart race. Sometimes, after the girls were in bed, they would sit on the porch talking about their dreams and fears until the stars came out. "Tell me about their mother," Emily said one evening, gathering courage to ask the question that had been haunting her. Daniel was quiet for so long that Emily thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "Sarah was everything good in the world. Kind, gentle, patient. She wanted a house full of children. His voice caught. The twins' birth was difficult. The doctor said she wouldn't survive another pregnancy, but she was so happy to have her girls. Then, when they were just 6 months old, there was an accident. A snake spooked her horse, and she was thrown. "I'm sorry," Emily whispered, understanding now why he sometimes looked at his daughters with such fierce protectiveness mixed with grief. "I blame myself for a long time," Daniel continued. "If I had been with her that day, if I had fixed the fence she was riding to check, if I had insisted she stay home with the babies." He shook his head. "It nearly destroyed me. The girls kept me sane, but I've been so afraid of failing them too." Emily reached out without thinking and covered his hand with hers. "You haven't failed them. They're wonderful children because of you." Daniel turned his hand over, palm up, and intertwined their fingers. The simple gesture sent warmth shooting up Emily's arm and settling around her heart. "Emily," he said softly, "I need to tell you something. These past few weeks, watching you with Anna and Cora, seeing how you've brought light back into this house, I'm starting to feel things I thought I'd never feel again." Emily's breath caught. "Daniel, I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "I know you came here running from your own heartbreak. But I needed you to know that what I'm feeling for you isn't just gratitude." Before Emily could respond, Anna's voice called from inside. "Papa." "Miss Emily, Cora had a bad dream." They rushed inside to comfort the little girl. But as Emily held Cora close and watched Daniel stroke his daughter's hair, she realized that somewhere between that first desperate night and this moment of family intimacy, she had fallen completely in love with all three of them. What she didn't know was that their perfect bubble of happiness was about to be shattered by a visitor from her past who would stop at nothing to destroy what she had found. 3 weeks had passed since that magical evening on the porch, and Emily had never been happier. She woke each morning with purpose, her days filled with the sweet chaos of family life. Anna and Cora now called her Mama Emily without hesitation, and Daniel's gentle touches and lingering glances promised a future she had never dared to dream possible. On this particular Sunday morning, the four of them sat on a checkered blanket beside Willow Creek, enjoying a picnic lunch Emily had prepared. Daniel's arm had healed enough that he could lift Cora onto his shoulders while Anna picked wildflowers nearby. The sight of them laughing together made Emily's heart swell with contentment. "Mama Emily, look what I found." Anna ran over with a handful of purple asters, her face glowing with excitement. "Can we put these in a jar for the kitchen table?" "Of course, sweetheart," Emily said, accepting the slightly wilted bouquet as if it were made of gold. "They're beautiful." Daniel caught Emily's eye over Anna's head and smiled that gentle smile that made her stomach flutter. "You know," he said quietly as the girls ran back to play by the water's edge, "I've been thinking about something." "Oh." Emily arranged the flowers more carefully in her lap, trying to appear casual despite her racing heart. "This arrangement we have," Daniel said, moving closer on the blanket until their shoulders touched. "I know we said it was temporary, just until I could manage on my own again. But Emily, I don't want you to leave. Ever." Emily looked up into his warm brown eyes, seeing her own feelings reflected there. "Daniel, marry me," he said simply. "Not because I need a housekeeper or the girls need a nanny, but because I love you. Because we're already a family in every way that matters." Emily's breath caught in her throat. After the humiliation of her failed wedding, she had never expected to hear those words again. "Are you sure?" "Daniel, there are things about me, reasons why Caleb—" "I don't care what that fool thought," Daniel said firmly, taking her hands in his. "You're perfect for us, Emily. Perfect for me." Before Emily could respond, Anna and Cora came running back, their dresses damp from creek water and their faces bright with mischief. "What are you talking about?" Anna demanded with a child's curiosity. Daniel grinned at Emily, then looked at his daughters. "I just asked Mama Emily to marry me and become your real mama forever." The twins erupted in squeals of delight, throwing themselves into Emily's arms. "Really? Really truly?" Cora asked, her quiet voice filled with wonder. If that's what you girls want, Emily said, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. We want it more than anything. Anna declared, we've been praying for God to let you stay forever. As they packed up their picnic, the four of them began making plans. They would have a simple ceremony at the church, with the whole town invited. Daniel would ask Reverend Matthews to perform the service next month. Anna and Cora would wear matching blue dresses and carry flower baskets. It'll be the most beautiful wedding Millbrook has ever seen, Emily said, her heart so full she thought it might burst. None of them noticed the lone rider watching them from the ridge above the creek, his face twisted with anger and jealousy. The next morning, Emily was hanging laundry behind the cabin when she heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. She looked up, shading her eyes against the sun, and felt her blood turn to ice. Caleb Hartwell sat astride his black stallion, his cold blue eyes fixed on her with unmistakable malice. Well, Caleb said, dismounting slowly. Look what we have here. The barren bride playing house with someone else's children. Emily's hands trembled as she dropped the wet sheet back into the basket. What do you want, Caleb? What I want, Caleb said, stepping closer, is to understand how you managed to trap another poor fool into thinking you're worth marrying. Does Morrison know about your little problem? Does he know why I wouldn't have you? Daniel knows everything, Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. And he doesn't care. Caleb laughed, a harsh sound that made Emily flinch. Oh, he'll care. Once I explain to him exactly what kind of woman he's planning to marry. Once I tell him about Boston. Emily's face went white. You don't know anything about Boston. Don't I? Caleb pulled a folded letter from his jacket pocket. Amazing what you can learn when you write to the right people. Your first engagement, Emily. The one that ended when poor William Ashford discovered you'd been lying to him about your condition. The scandal that drove you out of Boston society entirely. That's not what happened, Emily whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? From what I hear, you led that man on for months, let him plan a future with children you knew you could never give him. When the truth came out, his family demanded he break the engagement immediately. Called you a fraud and a liar. Emily's legs felt weak. The truth was more complicated than that, but Caleb's version would be easier for people to believe. Daniel isn't like that. He loves Anna and Cora. He doesn't need more children. Maybe not, Caleb said, his smile turning cruel. But this town doesn't take kindly to liars and cheats. Once word gets around about your past, about how you've been deceiving honest folks, well, let's just say life might become very uncomfortable for the Morrison family. At that moment, Daniel appeared around the corner of the house, his face darkening as he took in the scene. Hartwell, what are you doing on my property? Just having a friendly chat with your intended, Caleb said smoothly, congratulating her on her good fortune in finding another man willing to take damaged goods. Daniel took a threatening step forward. Get off my land. Now. Oh, I'm going, Caleb said, mounting his horse with deliberate slowness. But first, let me give you some friendly advice, Morrison. Ask your bride about Boston. Ask her about William Ashford and why she really left the city. Then decide if you want to tie yourself to a woman who makes a habit of lying to the men who try to love her. After Caleb rode away, Daniel turned to Emily with concern. What was he talking about? What happened in Boston? Emily's voice came out as barely a whisper. I was engaged before to a man named William. When he learned I couldn't have children, his family pressured him to end it. But, Daniel, it wasn't like Caleb made it sound. I never lied about anything. William knew from the beginning that children might not be possible for me. Daniel pulled her into his arms, feeling her trembling against his chest. I don't care what happened before you came here. All I care about is the woman I know, the mother my daughters adore. But even as he spoke the words, Emily could see doubt creeping into his eyes. Not doubt about his feelings for her, but doubt about what their marriage might cost his family if Caleb followed through on his threats. That night, after Daniel had gone to bed and the girls were fast asleep, Emily sat at the kitchen table staring at her packed carpet bag. She had pulled it out from under her bed, telling herself she was just being practical, just preparing for the possibility that she might need to leave quickly. But as she looked at the bag that had carried all her worldly possessions from one broken dream to another, Emily realized she was preparing to run again. Because no matter how much Daniel loved her, no matter how much Anna and Cora needed her, she couldn't bear to watch Caleb destroy this family the way he had destroyed her. By morning, Caleb's poison would start spreading through Millbrook like wildfire, and Emily would have to decide whether to stay and fight for her happiness or sacrifice herself to protect the people she loved most. The choice she made would determine not just her own future, but the fate of the family she had come to love more than life itself. Emily woke before dawn with her decision made. Her carpet bag sat by the door, and the letter she had written to Daniel lay on the kitchen table, explaining why she had to leave. She couldn't let Caleb destroy this beautiful family because of her past. Better to break her own heart than watch him poison the town against Daniel and the twins. As she reached for her bag, small footsteps padded into the kitchen. Anna and Cora stood in their nightgowns, their eyes wide with understanding that cut straight through Emily's heart. "You're leaving," Anna said, her voice flat with the kind of resignation no 6-year-old should know. "We saw you packing last night," Cora whispered, clutching her doll tighter. Emily knelt down, her voice breaking. "Sweethearts, there are bad men who want to hurt your papa because of me. If I stay, they might make life very hard for your family. But you are our family," Anna said fiercely. "You promised." Before Emily could respond, both girls ran past her and out the front door. Emily chased after them, her heart pounding with fear as she saw them racing toward town in their bare feet and nightgowns. By the time Emily caught up, Anna and Cora had reached the center of Millbrook, where early morning shopkeepers were opening their stores. The girls climbed onto the steps of Murphy's General Store, and Anna's clear voice rang out across the square. "Everyone, please listen," Anna called out. "We need to tell you about our mama." People began gathering, curious about the two small children making such a scene. Emily hung back, terrified of what the twins might say, but unable to stop them. "This is our mama, Emily," Anna said, pointing to Emily with fierce pride. "Some of you might think she's not good enough because she can't have babies of her own, but we want to tell you something important." Cora stepped forward, finding courage in her sister's bravery. "Before Mama Emily came, we were hungry and scared and alone. Our real mama died when we were babies, and Papa tried his best, but sometimes he was too sad to take care of us. But then Mama Emily found us," Anna continued, "and she gave us food and baths and bedtime stories. She taught us to read and made us laugh again. She didn't have to love us, but she chose to." Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house stepped forward, her face softening. "Girls, what are you trying to say?" "We're saying that families aren't just about babies being born," Anna declared. "They're about people who choose to love each other. Mama Emily chose us, and we choose her, and that makes us a real family." Dr. Walsh, who had delivered the twins years ago, nodded slowly. "These children speak wisdom. I watched Miss Mitchell with them. She's a natural mother, regardless of any other circumstances." "But what about what Caleb Hartwell's been saying?" someone called out. "About her lying to men about her condition?" Emily's face burned with shame, but Anna surprised everyone by answering firmly. "Mama Emily never lied to anyone. She told Papa everything, and he loves her anyway, because love isn't about what you can't do. It's about what you choose to do." Just then, Daniel appeared, having discovered Emily's letter and followed the commotion to town. He took in the scene, his daughters defending the woman they loved, the community listening with growing respect, and Emily's tear-streaked face. "My daughters are right," Daniel said, his voice carrying clearly across the square. "Emily Mitchell is the best thing that ever happened to our family. Any man who can't see her worth doesn't deserve her." At that moment, Caleb rode into the square, clearly expecting to find Emily disgraced and alone. Instead, He found a community rallying around the family he had tried to destroy. "This is touching," Caleb said with a sneer, "but facts are facts. She's barren, and she deceived her last fiancé about it." "She didn't deceive anyone," Daniel said firmly. "She told me the truth from the beginning. And even if she hadn't, it wouldn't matter. I already have 2 daughters who love her, and that's all the family we need." The crowd murmured agreement, and Emily saw something she had never expected: acceptance, understanding, and support from people who barely knew her. "You can spread all the poison you want, Hartwell," Dr. Walsh said loudly. "But this town recognizes love when we see it. And what we see is a family that belongs together." Faced with the community's united front, Caleb's expression twisted with rage. "This isn't over," he snarled, then spurred his horse out of town. As the crowd dispersed with smiles and words of support, Emily found herself surrounded by Daniel and the twins. Anna and Cora threw their arms around her waist while Daniel pulled all 3 of them close. "No more running," Daniel whispered against her hair. "We face everything together from now on." "Together," Emily agreed, finally understanding that she had found something stronger than shame, stronger than fear. She had found a family worth fighting for. 3 months later, the October morning dawned crisp and golden, painting Millbrook in shades of amber and rust. Emily stood before the small mirror in Mrs. Henderson's boarding house room, adjusting the simple white dress that the women of the town had helped her sew. It was nothing like the elaborate gown she had worn for her first, failed wedding attempt. This dress was modest, practical, and made with love by hands that had come to accept her as one of their own. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Henderson said, fastening a string of pearls around Emily's neck. "These were my mother's. Every bride in this town has worn them for good luck." Emily touched the smooth pearls, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't believe how kind everyone has been. After everything that happened with Caleb Hartwell showed his true colors that day," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "And you showed yours. Those little girls defending you like that, speaking such wisdom, well, it opened a lot of eyes in this town. We realized we've been judging you for all the wrong things." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. "Mama Emily, are you ready?" Anna's voice called through the door. Emily opened the door to find both twins dressed in matching blue dresses, their hair braided with white ribbons and their faces glowing with excitement. Each girl carried a small basket filled with rose petals from Dr. Walsh's garden. "You look like princesses," Emily said, kneeling down to hug them both. "Are you ready to be flower girls?" "We've been practicing all week," Cora said shyly. "Anna taught me how to walk slow and sprinkle the petals just right. And I taught Cora the song we're going to hum," Anna added proudly. "The one you sing to us at bedtime." Emily's heart swelled as she looked at these 2 precious girls who had changed her entire world with one innocent question. 6 months ago, she had been a rejected bride with no family and no future. Now she was about to marry the man she loved and officially become mother to the children of her heart. The walk to the church felt like a dream. The entire town had turned out for the wedding, filling the same pews where Emily had once been humiliated. But today, the faces looking at her were filled with warmth and genuine happiness for her joy. At the altar stood Daniel, handsome in his Sunday best, his eyes bright with love as he watched her approach. Reverend Matthews smiled kindly, the same man who had witnessed her first wedding disaster, now ready to celebrate her triumph. Anna and Cora walked ahead of Emily, sprinkling rose petals and humming their sweet melody. When they reached the front, they took their places beside the altar, beaming with pride at their important role. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Matthews began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Daniel Morrison and Emily Mitchell, and to celebrate the formation of a family built not just on love between husband and wife, but on the love shared between parents and children." Daniel reached for Emily's hands, and she felt the same electric connection she had experienced that first day in his barn. But now there was no uncertainty, no fear. only the solid foundation of shared love and commitment. Daniel, the Reverend continued, do you take Emily to be your wife, to love and cherish her, and to stand by her through all of life's joys and sorrows? I do, Daniel said firmly, his voice carrying clearly through the church. I take her not just as my wife, but as the mother of my children and the heart of our home. And Emily, do you take Daniel to be your husband, and do you promise to love him and his daughters as your own family? Emily looked at Daniel, then at Anna and Cora, who were watching her with such hope and love in their eyes. I do, she said, her voice strong despite her tears. I promise to love you all with everything I have, for as long as I live. As Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause and cheers. Daniel kissed Emily gently, and then, to everyone's delight, Anna and Cora rushed forward to hug them both, creating a circle of family love that brought tears to many eyes in the congregation. The reception in the church hall was filled with laughter, music, and the kind of community warmth that Emily had never experienced before. Mrs. Murphy had made her famous apple pies. Dr. Walsh played his fiddle, and even stern old Mr. Peterson was seen wiping away tears during the toasts. But the moment that meant the most to Emily came when Anna stood on a chair and asked for everyone's attention. We want to thank everyone for coming to our mama's wedding, Anna said in her clear, brave voice. 6 months ago, Cora and I asked a sad lady if she could be our mommy. We didn't know her name or where she came from. We just knew we needed her. Cora, finding her own courage, added, and now she's not just our mama in our hearts. She's our mama for real. Sometimes the best families are the ones you choose. The crowd burst into applause again, and Emily had to dab at her eyes with her handkerchief to keep from sobbing with joy. As the sun set over Millbrook, Emily found herself on the porch of the cabin that was now truly her home, watching Daniel push Anna and Cora on the swing he had built in the old oak tree. Her wedding dress had been replaced by a simple, everyday dress, but the joy on her face remained unchanged. Happy? Daniel asked, joining her on the porch and slipping his arm around her waist. Happier than I ever thought possible, Emily replied, leaning into his warmth. When those two little girls asked me to be their mommy, I thought they were just lonely children who didn't understand what they were asking. And now, Emily watched Anna teaching Cora how to pump her legs to swing higher, their laughter floating across the yard like music. Now I know they were two little angels sent to save a broken woman and show her that love comes in all forms. They didn't just ask me to be their mother. They asked me to become part of something bigger than myself. That night, as Emily tucked Anna and Cora into bed in the home they all shared, Cora looked up at her with sleepy eyes and said, Mama Emily, are you going to stay forever now? Emily kissed her daughter's forehead, her daughter legally and completely now, and smiled. Forever and always, my sweet girl. This is where I belong. As she turned out the lamp and closed the door to the girls' room, Emily reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. She had come to Millbrook as an unwanted bride, rejected and alone. But sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the smallest voices asking the biggest questions. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to say yes to love in all its unexpected forms, you find that you haven't just gained a family, you've found your home.